take the blessings of this Vaishnavas, of all the acharyas, the gurus who have given us this knowledge, so that we can chant it. A lot of the times we think that Bhagavad Gita is just a scriptural book. It should just stay in the temple, right? At home, probably have a Bhagavad Gita in the temple. But Bhagavad Gita and the scriptures give us a way to live our life that is relevant for us today, whether it's kids, teenagers, university students, adults working with children. And it gives us a way to actually get away from the mundane, everyday sort of life and integrate the two together so that we can live this life in a way that we can transcend the life. You can repeat with me if you know the prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadameyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadhavaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamascha He Krishna Kurana Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhyobheva cha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai. Thank you everybody for sitting here so attentively listening. It's nice to have an audience, you know. It's nice to have people who want to hear, who want to, even if you don't want to hear, but you're just here because you're time passing, it's still beneficial, right? So yeah, seeking everybody's blessings. Hopefully we can discuss, hopefully we can chant the Bhagavad Gita. The kids included, the Bhagavad Gita is for everyone. So yeah, it'll be nice. So I'll just read the translation out again. This is Bhagavad Gita 2.47. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities and never be attached to not doing your duty. So put your hands up if you've heard this verse, whether the Sanskrit or the English or anything like it before. Couple? Okay, more people putting their hands up? Nice. So how have you heard the verse before? Say yourself. So do your good or your bad duties, your karma, give everything to Krishna, and don't expect anything in return. So Krishna will help us in whatever's going on. That's a nice explanation. So when we look at the Bhagavad Gita, when we look at chapter 2, right? How many of us have read the Bhagavad Gita? Okay, some people. How many of you have got a Bhagavad Gita at home? Okay, more people put their hands up. Okay, how many of you have at least touched the Gita at home? Okay. How many of you have opened the Gita? Okay, so we're getting somewhere. How many of you at least read something in the Gita, you know? something, yeah? And yet, when we go, how many of you have read the Gita? There's only about 5 people that put their hand up. So, what is the Bhagavad Gita about? Can somebody set the scene? You've touched the Gita, you've opened the book. At least set the scene. Where does the Bhagavad Gita take place? Okay, so what's the context of the Gita?
It's teaching us like daily life, like it's teaching us all areas, like political area, how should your education be? It's teaching us in like
Okay.
all the concepts.
So the Bhagavad Gita is teaching us, it's like a manual for life. It's like a manual for life, a GPS for life, for those of us of my generation and younger that can relate. You know, we don't have manuals anymore, we just have GPSs. But but what about the context of Gita itself? Where does it take place? Yes, a battlefield, right? The Bhagavad Gita is based on a battlefield. The Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra war, where we have the Kauravas, the Pandavas, family trying to fight each other over what? A piece of land, right? And here we have the Bhagavad Gita just moments before the war is about to start. Krishna's going through the Gita. The Gita is 700 verses, right? 700 verses, it's said that it took around 48 minutes, 45 to 48 minutes to speak. Now, we aren't on a battlefield, but we would struggle to read 5 minutes of the Bhagavad Gita a day. And here is Arjun, just before a battle, listening to the Bhagavad Gita for 48 minutes, just before a war is about to start. Whose situation is more like urgent, you know? Ours or Arjun's? Arjun's and Krishna's, right? Moments before a battle, they're talking about this philosophy, about this religious book. Talking about Krishna, talking about Bhagwan, God, all this, that, the other. Where does he talk about, you should just kill Karna, this is how you kill him, this is the strategy I'm going to give you, this is how you do it? He doesn't say any of that. But as Mataji was mentioning, he's giving a way of life, he's giving knowledge and understanding on how to live. At the start of chapter 2, Arjuna says to Krishna, Karpanya dosho pahada svabhava prichami dvam samudayachayascha shishyasti Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava prichami tvam dharma samudacheta yachayasyanishritam bruhitam ne shishyasti hamshadi mam tvam prapannam. Arjun saying to Krishna, right, he's tried to go through and he's tried to understand, like, look, you know, on my side I've got my family, on their side I've also got family. Why should I fight? If I fight, I'm killing my own men. But he's saying now, I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I don't know what my duty is. On the one side, I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a warrior, I'm a fighter. But on the other side, I've got my family. He had his brothers. He had his guru. He had all these personalities on the other side. But he says, Shishyaste hamshadi mam tvam prapannam. He says to Krishna, now I'm your disciple. I'm surrendered unto you. This is in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And he's saying that, Krishna, you instruct me. You tell me what to do. Arjun's on a battlefield. He's speaking to Krishna, who's not even fighting in the war. And he's telling Krishna, you tell me how I should go about my duty. And Krishna, we know Krishna is Bhagwan. That's why we come to the temple to get darshan of Krishna. Krishna knows what is Arjun's situation. What does Krishna do? He gives him knowledge, he gives him transcendental knowledge, right? According to the time, the place, and the circumstance of where Arjun was in his life. What time was it? It was a time of a battle, it was a time of fighting. What place was it? It was a battlefield, it was Kurukshetra. And what was his circumstance? He was a Kshatriya, he was a warrior, and he has his family on the other side. This was his situation. But Krishna, like an expert navigator, like an expert GPS system, better than the satellites we have in space, where, sometimes you'd be off by a few degrees. Sometimes if you're in the middle of a forest, you won't even get signal. Krishna perfectly helps Arjuna navigate his life based on his situation. And what does he do? Just in chapter 2 itself, he starts off with talking about 3 main sorts of philosophies. One is called the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya means understanding there's material nature and there's spiritual nature. There's the body and there's the soul. And understanding this, then you understand that, okay, birth, death is inevitable, right? Material nature, anybody who comes to the material nature, we know they have a big start time and an end time. Our phones, we buy them when they're brand new, but once they're starting to die away, we let them go, right? Do you get attached to your phone? Are you like 5 years, 10 years with the same phone? Why do you change your phone? Because the old one's useless now, right? So in the same way, Krishna is telling Arjuna that, look, the body has its use. Once its use is gone, you change the body. So there's no point, thinking about the body too much. Death is inevitable. Whether you die on the battlefield or whether your enemies die, it doesn't matter, right? Then he goes through this idea of Gyan. This is the Sankhya philosophy. First was Sankhya philosophy, then he goes to Sakam Karma. Sakam Karma means doing your prescribed duties in a way where you're going to be the enjoyer. So he goes, okay, Arjun, you're a Kshatriya, right? Imagine if you fight the battle. If you win the battle, what do you get? You get the kingdom. You can enjoy the kingdom. If you die on the battle, then what's your loss? Because then you go to heaven, you go to the godly planets, with Indra, the demigods, etc., and you get to enjoy that. But imagine if you don't fight. What is your benefit if you don't fight? Actually, there's no benefit, because you'll be tortured. You'll be told of, like, you're a Kshatriya and you didn't fight? What sort of coward are you? You'll be chastised by everyone. You ran away from the battlefield? So in this way, Krishna is giving Arjuna that thought that, okay, just do your duty. You're a Kshatriya, so just fight. But fight with the mood of, okay, I'll get some benefit from it. But then he gives something higher. He gives this idea of Nishkam Karma Yoga, which means doing your duties, but not being attached to the results. And specifically verse 47 is where we really start. 47 to 49, Krishna gives Arjuna the practical on the how to perform Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? In the world, when we buy anything, or actually, forget buying anything, let's just stick to phones, because everybody in the room probably has a phone, right? When we get stuck, if we're more of an elderly nature, we get stuck with the phone often. What do? We call our children. How do I do this on my phone? And if we're children, if we're kids of the younger generations, we're like, how do you not get it? But then we have our own thing that we don't understand how to do on the phone. So then we're like, okay, let me Google it, right? We kids, we're like, let's Google it. I don't know how to do this, but let me Google it. Right? So we do these things. And in the same way, Krishna is giving Arjuna, how do you perform Nishkama Karma Yoga? Arjuna didn't have a 108 dial-in, right? Speed dial on the phone. His speed dial was in front of him, Krishna. And the speed dial for us, for everything in life, is the Bhagavad Gita at home, which is accumulating dust on in the temple. So when it comes to verse 47, when Krishna is speaking to Arjuna about Nishkam Karma Yoga, how to perform it, in verse 47, he actually gives the art of how to do work. We can break it down into 4 things, right? The verse that we just read. The first part, you have a right to perform your duty, right? Your prescribed duty. Second part, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. The third part, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. And the fourth, never be attached to not doing your duty. When we look at the Sanskrit, actually, the first word was what? Karmanya, right? Karma is the root word of it, karma, which we understand. But Srila Prabhupada translates it in a very, very nice way. He translates it as prescribed duty. Prescribed duty. Now, when Mataji, you shared about the verse, right, what your understanding of the verse was, we were talking about work, we were talking about doing things. But here Srila Prabhupada's translated it as prescribed duty because he wants to emphasize a certain thing. That Krishna is not saying that you just do whatever comes up. Krishna is saying that you have something specific to do. And in the purport, the commentary that we read, Srila Prabhupada explains that there's 3 types of works that we generally perform. Prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. Prescribed duties are things that have been ordained by high authorities to do. They're in the scriptures, they're part of our occupational duties, and these sort of things. Things that we have to do to live in the world, to come out of the world also. Then there's capricious work, which is things that we haven't been told by authority that we have to do, but we kind of just go, I feel like doing this, I'm going to do this. Or I think this will be good for me, even though no seniors have told me, so I'm going to do it. Sometimes it'll be good, sometimes it will be bad. We won't necessarily know. And then there's inaction, meaning we just don't do the work. So generally, when we talk about this work, we talk about karma, we just talk about doing something, doing work. But here Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing on prescribed duty because that's what Krishna wanted Arjuna to understand. That was his prescribed duty to fight. Right? That was his duty at that time. It was to fight. From a family relationship perspective, he could have not fought. But his duty was to fight. And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada told us that actually, that whimsical action, that whimsical mental concoction of what we think we should do, isn't very good for us. It's not conducive for us. We should be really thinking about the prescribed duty. So what does prescribed duty actually mean? Right, so we can break it out into two sort of things. One is our occupational duties, our duties that pertain to the body, right? So things that we have to do. Maybe we have to go to work, we have to cook, we have to look after the family, we have to engage in these relationships. All these sort of things, family, friends, right? All this counts as our occupational duties in the grand scheme of things. Then we've got our constitutional duties. Constitutional means looking at our spiritual life, looking at what is eternally beneficial for us. Things like coming to the temple, right? That's how most of us start off, right? Especially if most of us in the room, apart from a few, are of Hindu origin, right? But equally, we've got great people here who are listening attentively also, so thank you for coming. It's nice, right? Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita is not for just Hindus, it's for everyone, because the idea is, as you were sharing, it's a way of life, it's how to live. Hindus never existed. The word Hindu doesn't exist in historical terms. It's a way of life. Yeah, exactly. Right? So many of us will start by coming to the temple, taking darshan of the deities, and then some, like those of us sitting here, will come and go, okay, like, who's this speaker sitting and speaking so loudly on the microphone? Let me just hear him for a bit. If I like it, I'll listen. If I don't, I'll go on my phone. I'll leave the room, Okay, time passed, like I said before as well. Maybe we just, okay, at 6 o'clock my friend's coming, so I'll just listen to the class until then, But we have to start from somewhere. That's part of our constitutional duties. And we should all be thinking about doing something more. Come to the temple more regularly. Find those who are practicing spirituality more sincerely. Find them, connect with them, speak to them. When we look at prescribed duties, when we look at specifically the occupational side, Shri Radha Gokulananda, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman, Shri Gaurnitai ki Jai. when we look at our occupational duties, those duties pertaining to the body, right? Those of us who like to introspect, who like to think more about, okay, like what's going on, you know, then we'll actually see that every living entity, from the human to the dog, to the cat, to the whale, to the lion, to the ant, to the bacteria, they all perform occupational duties. Because what's fundamentally behind the duties that we perform, those duties pertaining to the body? 4 things: eating, sleeping, mating, defending. We go to work as humans, we go to work, we go to college, we go to school, whatever it is. We go to all these places. Why? Because we want to study, because we want to earn money. But is money the goal? No. The goal is because we want nice food. We want a nice home so that we can sleep in. We want a nice home so that we can have our family, our friends, and connect with people with, have our relationships. And what's the 4th thing I mentioned? Defending. Mating and defending. Defending. What's our defense? Are we going to the army? Are we joining the army? What's our defense? Future is, yeah, that's a good one. I never thought of that one. Right? We study, etc., so that we protect our future. But on a more basic level, if I said something bad about you, what are you going to do? Defend yourself, right? Either say something back, put your hands up, put your fists up. All these things happen. That's our defense. It's not that we have to go to the army and hold some, machine guns, etc. We still defend. Principally speaking, every living entity does this. Imagine a dog, a street dog. They have their own gully, they have their own alleyway. Any other dog comes in that alleyway, what do? Bark. Because that's their defense. Then what happens? Somebody's just thrown some food into the bin. What happens? They're fighting for that food. Eating. In that alleyway they've got their own nice little bed, That bed could be a dustbin, it could be just a piece of land on the floor, but they've got their space to sleep. Anybody dares to sleep in that space? Right? And then mating. We mate in our rooms, we have our relationships, we have our partners, etc. We want to do it in our house, we want to engage in relationships in our house, we go to parks, engage in our relationships there. Mating doesn't just have to be sexual relationships, it could also just be relationships in general. But animals do the same thing, they have their own family, right? I mean, they might not get married, etc., but I mean, when there's a male dog and a female dog, because when another male dog's looking at the female dog, they're protective. They're like, no, this is my female dog, So what's the difference between us and them? Everything we do, we just want to glamorize it. We're going, okay, instead of being a clerk, I'm going to be a manager. Instead of being a manager, I'm going to be a CEO of the company. But at the end of the day, what do? Eat, sleep, mate, defend. That's the only thing we do. That's what ultimately why we want to be a CEO, because we want the prestige so that people look at me and go like, yo, he's got something big, he's got a big title, he's got a big house, he's got all this big. And then you've got more to defend, more to protect. So that everybody does, every living entity does. From the ants to the dogs to the humans. So what's special about being human? The special thing about being human is that we have intelligence that can help us look at something which is of a higher dimension. The dogs will look at the 3 dimensions and consider time. We consider the 3 dimensions plus time, but we have the ability to look at a higher dimension in terms of Krishna. Imagine a dog walks in right now. Imagine he's right there. What's the dog going to do? What do you think? What I think the dog will do is he'll look around, He'll see nice paintings, he'll see nice people, he'll sniff around, come to people, sniff around for a bit. Then, if the curtains were open, he'd probably look through the curtains, look at Radha Gokulananda, bark a few times. I mean, I'm going to say because he's going, Radha Gokulananda look amazing, but he's probably not thinking that. But then he'll do that, and then he'll just go straight out. But what can humans do, right? Like all of you right now, sit down, ears open, listen to the speaker, whatever nonsense is coming from the speaker, but hopefully introspecting, thinking about what is being said and seeing how it applies to us. Seeing, okay, this speaker, he might not be perfect, but what he's saying actually makes a bit of sense, Happens to be me right now. But that's special about the human form of life. Other animals can't do this. So when we look at that duty which is pertaining to our constitutional duty, which is the duty of our spiritual life, we have to understand that if we want to get out of the same sort of things that animals do, we have to think more, focus more on that part of our life. We have to give it more time. Today, that might mean that you're coming on a Saturday afternoon for darshan, for arti, and then you happen to have stayed for class, and then you go home and rinse and repeat the next week. But we should be thinking, okay, for 6 days a week, I'm doing the same thing as a dog. For one day, I happen for a couple of hours to come to the temple and do something which is of a different nature. Let me make that, instead of a couple of hours, let me make it a couple of more hours. Let me actually dust off the Bhagavad Gita at home. I'm not going to stop on this, by the way. Let me just dust off the Bhagavad Gita at home and maybe read one verse a week, a day. Let's start with a day. One verse will probably take you 5-10 minutes, 5-10 minutes of not scrolling on Instagram, not scrolling on Facebook, I don't know what else is there. TikTok, Instagram, okay, I know about Instagram. Okay, all these things, right? 5-10 minutes, I'm sure we can spare 5-10 minutes to go away from that. Okay? But anyway, so what happens? So we're performing these duties, but why should I perform constitutional duties? Like, why do we perform duties in general? Why do we do anything in the world, right? Well, the obvious answer is that because we get some joy from it, we get some happiness or some satisfaction from it. Now, mothers or fathers sitting here who have just newly born children might be thinking, I thought it would be fun to have children, but now I'm thinking, not really. But actually, you still go about those duties because you understand that, okay, now it's tough. 10, 15, 20 years down the line, when the kids are growing nicely, when they're engaging nicely in their activities, when they have nice jobs, people, they would then look at me and go, oh, this is your son. Yes, it's my son, my daughter. Right? Or we do it because, okay, I dare to go there. I'm one of those speakers that dares to go there. We're a husband and we're washing the dishes because we know that if we don't wash the dishes, then for 3 hours we'll have to hear the wife go like, I go to work, I come home, I cook, I do all this thing for you, and you can't even do the dishes for me. Right? Lesson learned, right? We do the dishes, you go home, you do the dishes. So we do things because we get joy from it, we get happiness from it, we get satisfaction from it. But ultimately, when we understand that there's two things, when something's happening, when we're doing something, if we get joy from it, we're like, great, that's favorable, we're getting happiness from it. But sometimes there'll be things that we end up doing that we thought would be good for us, but then ends up being bad. It ends up hurting us in the wrong run, right? We get suffering from it. So then, oftentimes what happens is that people then start thinking, okay, like, I just want to be happy, I don't want this suffering in life. I don't want to be upset. So let me just do things which I think will be good, Let me engage in just good activities. Okay, yep, I've got my family duties, I've got all these things to do. But with my time, instead of going down to the pubs and getting drunk, etc., let me start doing things which are actually beneficial. Let me, I don't know, do some social service. Let me help an NGO out, right? Let me do pious activities. And so in this way, we then start going, okay, let me try and stop doing these negative, bad stuff, or things that I'm getting enjoyment from today, but actually, not very helpful in the long run. Let me just start doing work that is actually good for me, good for everyone. But then we find that actually, no matter how hard we try, it's amazing to do pious work. Pious activity is absolutely great. We should all be thinking of doing something which is pious. But when we start thinking about it and we start doing it, then we realize that actually, I'm doing all this pious work, but I'm still suffering. I'm still getting negative energy come to me. And that's because you can do all the pious activity in the world, but every pious activity, everything we do, has an element of negative energy associated to it. There's always something negative that you will end up doing inevitably. For example, we're breathing. Think of all the living entities that we're killing just by our breath, all the bacteria, all the organisms. Okay, maybe that's too extreme because we can't see them. We walk to the temple, whether it's from the car to here or from the home to here. Think of all that travel. Think of the amount of ants, the amount of insects, the living entities that would have come under our feet. Without desiring, without intending to do it, we end up doing some negative activities. So then we might think, okay, let me just not do anything then. I'm not going to get engaged in any sort of activity. Well, even then we have to think, actually, is that even possible? In the Bhagavad Gita, I could recite the verse, but just practically speaking, is it possible for us to not do anything? No, because just to live, we have to do something. Even if you're a multi-millionaire and you never have to go to work, somebody still has to cook for you. You might not be the one cooking, but you have to engage somebody to cook for you. Right? We have to engage in activity. It's not practical to not be engaged in not doing anything, if that makes sense. So we try to just do activities that we think we should do. Whatever comes to mind, whatever we want to do, try and be a good person here and there. That doesn't work because we end up doing bad things or we end up suffering anyway. We try to do pious activities, just focus on, okay, let me take out all the negative stuff I'm doing and just focus on pious, good activities. That still has some element of suffering involved. And not doing anything is impractical. So how do we save ourselves? How can we stop our own suffering? Conscious work, but you could also be consciously being a CEO. You could also be a conscious doctor who is very particular about how you do the operation, but still the patient dies. And this is the essence of what Krishna is saying in this verse, for the first part. He's saying that actually, transcend good work, bad work, and no work. As Mataji had mentioned, the point is that we should give all of our work to Krishna. But all of our prescribed work, things that are actually authorized for us to do. It's no good saying that, it's my work to go to the pub with my friends, have a few pints. No. Prescribed work means what I was mentioning, our occupational duties, things pertaining to maintaining the body, the relationships, and our spiritual activities, our constitutional duties. So that's the first part. Then the last part of the verse was, if I just read out, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities and never be attached to not doing your duty. How can I do something but not be the cause of doing it? If I'm holding these cartels up, how can I be the one who's not holding it up? I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? This is my hand. I'm holding the cartels up. I'm not attached to it.
You're just dropping it. Once your work is done, your satsang is done, kirtan's done, you drop it and you let it be. You don't carry it around with you everywhere.
But here, Krishna is saying, never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities. So if I'm holding the cartels up, then my mentality is that I'm the one that's held the cartel up. If I'm a doctor and I've just operated on a patient, my mentality is that I'm the one that just did the operation. When I'm going to my exams and I just got an A grade in my exam, my mentality is that I'm the one that sat the exam and I'm the one that got the A grade. It's the I.
It's the doer. I'm not the doer. The doer is Krishna.
But I still did it, didn't I?
Yeah, it's your physical instrument, just like your machinery to do a piece of work. We're the instrument doing Krishna's work.
Yeah. So one explanation is that we're instruments, right? I could hold the cartel up because I'm an instrument to be able to hold it up. Imagine if the cartel was stronger than my strength, heavier than my strength. I wouldn't be able to pick it up. The other thing that we can understand from this verse, from this explanation, is that in the Bhagavad Gita, also in the 18th chapter, Krishna gives us 5 factors of action. So 5 things have to be in place for anyone to do activity, right? Let's see if I've got the verse. This is 18:14, right? So I'll recite the Sanskrit. Aditishtan tatha karta karanam cha prithakvitam vividhascha prithak cheshta devam chevatar paschamam. Translation. The place of action, which is the body, the performer, the various senses, the many different kinds of endeavor, and ultimately the supersoul, these are the 5 factors of action. Okay. I'll simplify it. Instead of 5, I'll give you 3. Right? There's what I try to do, there's what is given to me or what is available to me, and then there's the authority or the approval. What I try to do, what's given to me, and the approval. How many of those can I control? Only one, what I try to do. What's given to me is not in my hand, and the approval is not in my hand. There's these other 2 factors, or if I stick to the verse, there's 5 factors, of which we are only one. So the other thing that we can think here is that for everything we do, there is an element of me doing it. That's 1/5. What is that element? The performer, right? We're the ones. I'm carrying this cartel because I endeavored to perform the activity. I'm going to pick the cartel up. It's not happening. Right? I have to endeavor for it. But ultimately, imagine if my hand became numb and I endeavored to pick the cartel up. I endeavored, but still I couldn't pick it up because my hand is numb. I can't pick it up. What is given to me, the material nature, the body, isn't functioning according to what I wanted to do because that's not in my hand. I can endeavor to have good grades in school, but ultimately what happens on the exam day, I mean, the adults don't hear this, but what happens on the exam day is just whatever happens, it doesn't leave the exam hall. So that's that part. And then there's also the super soul, the approval, right? I can have my hand, I can have all these facilities given to me, and I can also make the endeavor, but it might not work out still. A prime example, right? How many of us have been to job interviews before? I'm sure practically every adult probably has, right? Now imagine there's 2 job interviews coming up. They're in a firm or in a company that you really want to work for. And it's a position, a post that you really, really want. It's basically your dream come true jobs, right? The 2 firms that you really want to work in and the 2 jobs that you really want to work in. What happens? Okay, we're going to do the endeavor, right? Right. As soon as we find out that we have an interview, that's it, on Google, searching their website, doing all this research, preparing myself, calling my friends. Okay, what sort of interview questions do you think? Can you ask me? Can you help me prepare myself for the interview? Then we go to the shops, we buy the best suit. It might even be above budget because it's no, this is, I want to make sure I get this place. We do all these things. Then we go to the interview, first interview. We go to the interview, we come out and we're nailed it, calling our parents I've got the job, I know, when I entered the interview was asking question after question. They were smiling and beaming at everything I was saying. And it was they were just following on. I could just see there was a connection with the interviewer. I know they're just gonna, I'm just gonna get the job, I think what's gonna happen is that they're gonna be oh, will you accept this salary? And I'm nah, give me 10, 20K more, And then I'll accept it. And they were no, please, we can only afford 10K more. Just take it. I'm okay, fine, I'll do the pity on you. But what happens? We get the phone call. Sorry, you didn't make it through. Right? And then there's a second interview. Exact same preparation, exact same everything. You go to the interview. You're coming out of the interview and you go calling your mom going, Mom, I botched it. I don't think it went well. I was asked this question and I was stuck. I didn't know how to answer it. I ended up talking about how I play games in the evening, how I go to the pubs at night when I had prepared and my friends had told me that I shouldn't say any of that. I should be saying how I study for my AQA exams and everything like that, and how I do all these wonderful activities. And then you get the phone call. We'd like to offer you a position in our company. Will this compensation package be enough for you? Exact same endeavor, exact same facilities. On the one side you thought it went well, and then on the other side you thought it didn't go well, but the complete opposite results happens in studies. How can we explain that? Karmas. But who defines the karma? Our actions. But like I just said, you perform the exact same activities for both. On the one side, you botch the interview, past karmas, but who defines the past karmas? Who's looking at the past karmas? Ultimately, this comes down to the approval, the super soul, Krishna. What I try to do, what is given to me, and the approval. In that job interview scenario, I tried my very best in both job interviews. I got given the same facilities in both job interviews. But it was by the super soul's sanction that on the one side I got this result, on the other side I got a different result. So when we look at the verse, I'm just conscious of time. I could go on. You guys are an amazing audience. When we look at the verse, then the first thing is we understand that there's this idea of a prescribed duty. It's doing things which are ordained for us to do, related to maintaining the body, related to our spiritual practices, spiritual life. But that's not the only thing Krishna is talking about. He's also talking about this idea that we should free ourselves from thinking that we're doing something, because we're not the only doer in the activity. The results and the activity itself needs to be approved by Krishna. I can only do something because Krishna's allowed it to happen, or I will only get something because Krishna's allowing me to get it. Whether it's because of past karma or present karma, or it could be our bhakti, our spiritual bank balance. But Krishna's approving for it to happen. And when we put the two together, this idea of what it means to do prescribed duties, right, and offering the results to Krishna, and then being free from this mentality that I'm the one doing everything, then we get the secret to doing successful work. Then we understand that actually Krishna is the enjoyer, right? We understand this generally speaking. Krishna is the one that enjoys. That's why we offer everything to Krishna, because we understand Krishna is the one that has to enjoy everything. And when we understand that Krishna is the one that puts that stamp to say that, yes, this activity is allowed, this result is allowed, then when we understand those two things, then naturally we have to understand that whatever we do, there's only really one type of work that is guaranteed to be successful. And that is what Krishna desires. Think about it. Let's say you have a partner, a spouse, a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is. You could go and make a nice pancake for them. But imagine if they don't like pancakes. Are you going to be like, I made the pancake, this is what I want to give you, you take it? Yeah, you do that, and they might accept it, but it's like, I'd be happy if you just gave me cake. And if you want to do a pancake, then just put the cake in the pan and give me a pancake like that. Don't make the pancake. And then imagine if we gave them the cake. Then they'd be so much more happy, they'd be so much more pleased. You know that if you give them cake, they'll be happy. But you don't know what they'll be like if you end up giving them pancake. So why not just give them the cake? We're going to go through effort anyway. We're going to go through an endeavor anyway. So just give them the cake. In the same way, for Krishna tells us through the Bhagavad Gita, through the scriptures, what does he want? What does he want from us? So instead of guessing what he wants, why not just do what he wants? Read the scriptures, do what he wants. And the deities would like us to serve them in their deity form right now. So I shall end there. Hare Krishna. If anybody has questions, comments, you would like to speak to me, I'm more than happy to. But yeah. Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Gopala Nanda, Shri Shri Sitaram Lakshmana Hanuman, Shri Shri Gaunita